Good evening. Thank you for joining us. My name is Dennis Mason with theRouchePack.com. This is the regular Friday evening webcast featuring Mr. LaRouche. Joining me in the studio this evening are Matthew Ogden and Leander Bernstein to ask the questions. And without any further introduction, I'll give you Mr. Lyndon LaRouche.
In the recent week, I have completed probably what is the most important piece of scientific work ever done by me, and probably all our associates. So you will find that in my responses today to any questions given, that factor will be taken into account. So I now leave it over to the people to introduce me otherwise.
Well, I would like to present the first question, as is probably on the minds of our audience, and people will be curious to see what your response will be regarding what you just said. The first question pertains to the news that President Obama, has officially decided to send military aid to the rebels in Syria to arm the opposition against Assad in Syria. This decision came with the announcement by Deputy National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes that this week, lo and behold, the White House has concluded that Syria's Assad government has used chemical weapons against its own people, which is Obama's so-called red line. Obviously, as you have repeatedly said, this has nothing to do with Syrian rebels, but this has everything to do with sparking World War III. And this war would be one involving the United States, Britain, and allies on the one hand, and Russia primarily as the major actor on the other, something which mankind very well would not survive. And this is also something which the Joint Chiefs of Staff have known all along, and have, for that reason, Dempsey and others, repeatedly done everything possible to block such an escalation. Now, the immediate response from Russia is typified by two statements. The first came from Yuri Ushakov, who is an advisor to President Putin and was the former ambassador to the United States. Ushakov said, the Americans tried to present us with the information on the use of chemical weapons by the regime, but frankly, we thought that it was not convincing. We wouldn't like to invoke references to the famous lab tube that former Secretary of State Colin Powell used, referencing the false intelligence that got us into the Iraq War, but the facts don't look convincing in our eyes. Of course, this will not help in the preparation of the International Geneva Conference if the Americans actually initiate larger-scale support for the rebels. And the second comment came from Alexei Pushkov, who is the head of the Russian Duma's Foreign Relations Committee, who said, information about the use by Assad of chemical weapons has been fabricated in the same place as the lies about Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction. Obama is taking the same path as George W. Bush. And so we know that this absolutely is the case. And the comments about the parallels to Iraq and the weapons of mass destruction are fully appropriate, including the reference to where the fabrication of this intelligence came from, which is directly from London. The case of Blair in the Iraq War, and now the case of Cameron and Haig today. Haig was in the United States directly before the announcement of the arming of the Syrian rebels, and Cameron is pushing ravenously for others to join in. Now, even Zbigniew Brzezinski has weighed in on this on the side of sanity, saying this is pure wartime propaganda, denouncing this as a policy which will rapidly escalate, calling for an international coalition to be built involving the United States together with Russia and China and even the Japanese, and said that working with Qatar and Saudi Arabia in the name of promoting democracy is a ridiculous idea at best. So my question for you is, what is your analysis of this situation? What is your response to the moves that have been taken by the Obama administration and London?
No one has certainty on this present situation. No one has certainty. What you have is you have a stooge, Obama, so-called President Obama. I say so-called advisedly, because I don't think he runs anything. I think he's a snarling beast, incapable of real reason, who is simply an instrument of London. That's all he is. Now, as to what the situation is, now he has already taken a step, or announced a step, whoever told him to do it, which leads toward, in a very short time, in a countdown, to thermonuclear war, which means a war in which, at the crucial point of development of that war, you have about 1 hour and a half at most to finish off the human species in a thermonuclear war. So that's where we are. Now, what this means on the side of the British, and it's the British Queen and her circles which are really the authors of this war. The evidence is there. The plan was for the Queen, who said it publicly repeatedly, that her policy to effect the reduction of the population of the planet from the 7 billion people to about 1. The Queen is already implementing that policy. She becomes the greatest would-be mass murderer in the history of mankind. She is now very sick, which means that she might not make it. But that doesn't change anything, really, because this is the question of the empire. And empires go on, and this empire is a very long one. The most recent season of this empire goes back into the 17th century, when the Anglo-Dutch operation, and still the Dutch, is not the British Empire, it's the Anglo-Dutch Empire. And the heritage of the monarchy is entirely Dutch. And if you pay any attention to history, modern history, since World War II, the close relationship between the British monarchy and the Dutch monarchy has been the actual force of evil leading most of the problems of the world today. And it still is. So the President of the United States is really nothing but a dummy. A nasty dummy, no brain power shown, and no decency shown. He's a wreckage, piece of wreckage. But now the process goes on. We have two ways we can go. Either we can avoid this thermonuclear war, which means we have to shut down Obama, not because Obama is actually effective. He's only an instrument. But if the instrument is pulled, then the British Empire is out of the picture. So that's where we stand. So we have no decision either way. You can't call the shot either way. You have to call it both ways. It's either or. Either we stop Obama, stop him cold, throw him out of office, and there are signs of preparations for exactly that right now. On the other side, you have the British Empire, or the British Dutch Empire, to put it clearly, which is the fight that wants the war, wants the killing. Now, if you observe that the Queen has been engaged, and the Dutch even more so, in murder. The Dutch monarchy is the most murderous monarchy in Europe. If you are, say, reach the age of 70, and you sneeze in Dutch territory, they'll rush you to a hospital and give you last rest. That's the way they do it. The Dutch monarchy is the most murderous thing I know of on the continent of Europe. And it's the same thing as the British. The Queen has made her policy. She assembled all the people of her supporters in Britain, the leading supporters, again and again, since the Copenhagen period. And our policy is reduce rapidly the human population from 7 billion people to approximately 1. And they are presently doing that. Obama is presently doing that as an agent of that. And the British monarchy is presently doing that to reduce the population of the planet rapidly from 7 billion to about 1. And if they go ahead with the kind of game that the British and the Wall Street crowd are pushing, you will find that very soon, not sometime a year ahead, but this year, you will find genocide in the form of absolute starvation will be already rapidly wiping out most of our American citizens and others relevant. So the question is, do we have in the United States, do we have enough leaders in government who are not cowards or not scumbags, as we call them, to defend the people of the United States against what has been repeatedly, Wall Street has done repeatedly. Wall Street is the enemy of the human race.